as Wally said, so let me say why I'm presenting here. So as I have two roles here, General Counsel and Corporate Secretary. So when people have governance questions, I'm often the person they come to see to ask. And I've been here for 13 years, including a year before the institution became a university, when the Thompson Rivers University Act was being drafted. So the university was able to be consulted on that. And as Wally said, what I want to do here today is really provide baseline data. All of the members of the three governing bodies should have received by email a copy of my presentation, so you can see that it's not sophisticated. It's not a detailed dive into the more complicated issues. It's a simple outline of how the governance structure works here. And I will be posting this presentation onto my website after today. My assistant tells me I expect it until after the weekend, but it'll be up there. And to find it, it's easy to find my website. If you go to TRU's homepage and you search General Counsel, you'll get to my homepage, and that's where this presentation will be. And in the presentation, I'm also going to talk about the TRU Act and the Universities Act, and there's links to both of those on my homepage. So I haven't given you links because they're easy enough to find from my homepage. The one thing I want to say before I start is it's a short presentation, and so of necessity, I've abbreviated and summarized a lot of the material in the legislation, which means you lose granularity, you lose detail, and that I take full responsibility for the nature of that summarization. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Alan is the one who helps us out with all the technical issues at our regular Senate meetings in this room. So, the presentation, if you've had a look at it, you'll see that I've tried to make it a graphical illustration of the governance structure at the university, and when I've tried to make it literally a structure so that it looks like a house, and the angle part at the top is supposed to represent the roof under which all the other parts of the structure exist. So I want to start with a real basic fact that TRU is a corporation, which means, as I think everybody understands, it's an incorporeal entity. That means there's no body. It has to act to other breathing and speaking people because it has no body itself. The Act says, as I've noted on the slide, that the university has the powers and capacity of a natural person at full capacity. And I have to say that's a relatively new addition to the Act. In my memory, it was more restricted than that. So now we're treated as a full person, and we act through the governance bodies that I'm going to discuss today. And the powers of the governance bodies are divided between them. So we have, I'll discuss the Senate, the Board, and the Planning Council. And it is intended that between those three bodies, all the powers of the university are given to them. And none of them has seniority over the other. There's divided governance. And if we have time, if anybody cares to ask, I can talk about the difference between shared governance and divided governance. Here we have divided governance, which is, for Canadians, quite similar to the federal government we have in the country. Provinces having certain powers and the federal government having other powers. And the other thing I wanted to say about the way this is divided into a multi-cameral structure, my view is that that's an essential element of a modern Western university. This is the way universities are organized. If somebody says, what's the directing mind of the institution? Well, it's hard to say because Senate has its powers, board, administration, faculties, and planning council. They all have their role, and as I said, none of them is supreme over the others. Moving into this, the first governance body I want to talk about is the Senate, and the Senate is clearly the most active of the governance bodies at the university. It meets in this room once a month, and every month except for July and August. And there's 44 people on it, as I will talk about shortly. In addition, it has 12 committees, so there's a lot of work that goes through the Senate at the university here. The composition of Senate, this is in the Act. It's easy to look at, but I'm going to talk about it briefly. 44 people, you can see the list. Alan introduced those of them who are present here today. And the one comment I'll make on that is that there are 18 seats for TRU Faculty Association members and 4 seats for TRU OL Faculty Association members. So that means that there are 22 instructional people on the Senate, and you'll see 22 is exactly half of the total of 44. On the Senate, powers of the Senate, these are listed in Section 9 of the Act, and they're basically what you would think for a body that focuses on academic governance. They do things like set curriculum, set policies for exams, set criteria for grading. And I'm not going to spend much time on that. I think people understand the general type of work Senate is. In addition to the powers that Senate exercises in its own right, it also has a role, an advisory role, where it has to give advice to the board. There's, in Section 10 of the TRU Act, there's a list of subjects where the board must consult Senate and Senate must advise the board. So they have to work together, but ultimately these are matters of board jurisdiction. And maybe the easiest example is the academic schedule that comes forward, I think, originally out of the registrar's office each year. We have a 3-year rolling schedule, and every year the registrar's office drafts a new year that gets added to it. It comes to Senate, and from Senate it goes to the board with advice, and the board ultimately adopts that. Turning to the board, 15 seats on the board. We've gone through who's the people who are present. And you'll see that there's representation from different constituencies, and this is this is the legislature has crafted this blend of people, and this isn't unique to TRU. This is what other universities have, except for UBC, because UBC has UBC Okanagan. But the other universities in the province have this same structure with 2 students and 1 support staff and 2 faculty members and the president and the chancellor. And I'm just going to pause here for a minute to say something about fiduciary duties. And that is, so people come from different constituencies, but they all owe a duty to act in the best interests of the university. For the members of the board, the University Act specifically says that. A couple of years ago, the government introduced the legislature introduced a section 19.1 saying that members of the board must act in the best interests of the university. To be clear that they're not acting in the best interests of the group they represent, but once they get to the board table, they have to do what they think is in the best interests of the university, and of course they see that through the lens of where they come from. Powers of the board. There's a big long list of powers that the board has in Section 27 sub 2 of the University Act. And these are common to all universities in the province. In the TRU Act in Section 7 has a kind of a catch-all clause that I printed here, and effectively it's a residual clause that says if a power hasn't been given to the Planning Council or to the Senate, then it's a board power. So there's nothing left over. The residue is caught by that clause. Planning Council for Open Learning. Why do we have the Planning Council for Open Learning? Why do we have this unique arrangement? When TRU was UCC back in 2004 and it was decided we were going to become a university, it was also decided that we would acquire the British Columbia Open University. And at that point, the government decided that we should have something in our governance structure that specifically focused on open learning at the university. And for that reason, they introduced this third governance structure, the Planning Council for Open Learning. Composition, 14 people, and as the really unique feature of the Planning Council, other than its basic existence, is that we have people from other public post-secondary institutions in British Columbia on one of our governing bodies. So Michelle is here and Kylie on camera there. It's really unusual to have this sort of thing. You know, these people are in one respect our colleagues, in another respect they're our competitors, and they come together. I'm a member of this. I've seen this body function and it functions, I think, very well. And it's an interesting thing that acts in the interest of open learning at the university. The powers of the Planning Council are quite, they're important, but they're not expansive. The Planning Council sets the admission requirements for OL courses. This is an essential feature of openness. And it sets residency requirements for OL courses and programs. So those are very important to the openness, and when the legislation was drafted, that's why they were given these powers. Faculties, I'll talk briefly about. Faculties are contemplated in the legislation under the Universities Act. There's provisions for faculties to exist, and you can see that they are created by the board, and from time to time, boards at universities realign faculties at a university. They do that after getting a recommendation from Senate, and that happens, and that is a board decision ultimately. The faculties have the types of powers that I've listed here in the slide, and again, this is an abbreviation of the full list. And you know, one of the things that they get to do is to make rules for the government direction and management of the faculties in its affairs and business. And when they do that, they need the approval of Senate. And that's something that we need to be vigilant about, that approval from Senate when the faculties are acting. Next, I want to talk about the administration headed by the president of the university. The legislation provides that the president is the CEO of the university, and he must, I'll just read it, generally supervise and direct the academic work of the university. And I will say that in addition to that power in the legislation, the board, in its board charter, has said that it delegates responsibility for day-to-day operation of the university to administration as headed by the president. So there's, in addition to the power in the Act, the board has delegated day-to-day to the president. And I've listed some of the powers that the president has there. Notably is the budget goes through BCOS and winds its way finally to the board, but the legislation specifically says that that's the president's obligation to bring that forward. That's my time. And I'll move quickly through these. There's some related organizations that kind of fit into the puzzle. These aren't part of the governance structure, but I think people should understand what their role is here, particularly with regard to the Ministry of Advanced Education. And I want to say a word about the Ministry of Advanced Education, and I want to talk about the autonomy of our university and other universities in the province. My view is we are an autonomous university. The people, I think the argument against that is people can say that, well, look, the government appoints a majority of your board, and my reaction to that is, well, that's one of our three governance bodies. And it's not AVED that appoints the members to our board, it's cabinet. I'm not sure that AVED has any role in deciding who's on our board. The government funds us, yes, provides a great deal of funding for the university. And each year the government sends us a mandate letter. The Premier sends a mandate letter to each minister, and the ministers in return send mandates letters down. So every university in the province, every public post-secondary in the province gets a mandate letter. And the government tells us what they wish us to do, and our board is always very careful when it looks at the mandate letter to say that they will take into account what's in the mandate letter, but in the end, the members of our board owe their fiduciary duty to act in the best interests of the university, so they have to do that. And I think that really is a large part of why we're autonomous. And I have to say that the government decided that they wanted it that way. They're the one who created the legislation. If they had wanted to do it a different way, they could and can. Trade unions. So we have just briefly on this. We have 3 unions here at the university that are not part of the governance structure. They are involved in many things that we do at the university here. They negotiate collective agreements, and those collective agreements are negotiated with the board. And then they monitor compliance with the collective agreements by watching what happens, and if they don't like it, they can file grievances. TruSue, the student union here, it's an important organization on campus. Again, not part of our governance structure. Independent organization. The university has no say in how it's run at all. Under the University Act, we have to collect fees. We're statutorily required to collect fees from our students if they've been properly approved, and remit those to TruSue. And just as a note, for most people know, but TruSue does not include our Williams Lake students or our OL students. Finally, the foundation, the Alumni Association. These are again, these are independent of the university. They have their own boards. They're societies under the Societies Act, as is TruSue. And you can see the Alumni Association liaises and interacts with our alumni, and the foundation seeks to raise money for primarily for scholarships and